All right, guys, I am here this morning on the 10th of January of 2025 with my uncle, Ricky Cruz. And Ricky is the number, what child of LD and Gardas?
Number 8.
He is number 8. But now, he is referred to as the caboose of the family, but I'm going to just have to say something to Rick. I think I was actually the caboose because Granny raised me. I think I was number 9.
I remember you laying up in the bed taking a nap and stuff back in the day.
Yeah, well, after my mom and dad divorced when I was 6, my Granny Cruz pretty much, she raised me, and I was like a little brother to you. And even though we got about 8 years apart from each other, but anyway. Well, anyway, thank you guys for joining us for this episode of Down Home, and we're gonna talk with Ricky today and get his perspective on life out at the farm and growing up here in the Gritney community. But we're here at his house today in Bonifay, Florida, where he lives. He's a city boy now, so we out here doing it, but. We're going to start out just asking a few questions, Ricky. And what was your full name as it is on your birth certificate? Do you know?
It's Ricky, R-I-C-K-Y, Vaughn, V-O-N, last name Cruz, C-R-E-W-S.
Yeah. Now the fun question here is, do you know how you got that name?
I was told that there was a country singer or some singer named Ricky Nelson, I believe it was, and Frances and Christine, my two of my older sisters, named me.
Yeah. So is that where where Vaughn came from?
I have no earthly idea where Vaughn came from. I don't. It was V-O-N. I have no idea.
It's kind of like I was telling Clifton yesterday. I was like Hewlin Scott Cruz. I don't know where Scott came from, but I often wondered where Vaughn came from with you too. I didn't know. Where and when were you actually born?
I was born in Bonifay, Florida, July the 21st, 1960, and I heard Daddy talk about the doctor that delivered me, saying that he come out and told Daddy, he said, "Well, LD, you got another nasty old boy."
so that made 4.
Yeah.
Golly. Yeah. Well, as we were talking about that, and I'm going to try to get into this later on as I do these episodes, but what did you ever know what LD was? I mean, because his name was L.D. Cruz. Did you ever know of anything of what did that actually mean anything, or was it just
as far as I know, there was never a full name put to the LD, and because we had a Aunt AD and Uncle AC Cruz.
Those are all his brothers and sisters.
Yeah, and I don't know of a name that was put to the AC or AD.
Well, I don't know, but I was going to talk to Tommy's son, Cage. He seemed to think that he had found some information that the LD stood for Lafayette Delafonte Cruz. And I don't know if there's anything to it, but we're going to get with Cage later on and see where he found that in his research. But I was like you, nobody ever knew what LD or AC or AD or any of those the kids stood for and all. I
don't remember Daddy ever saying anything about a full name.
Yeah, it was just L.D. Cruz. Do you know how LD and Gardas met? Did they ever talk about that to you, or you have conversations about how those two ever met?
No, not that I can remember. Daddy was married prior to Mama, to Irene Curry, and she passed away at death of our half sister Ann.
Yeah.
And
She died at childbirth
Yeah.
with Ann.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
And but no,
The story goes from the older brothers and sisters that they had met at a brush arbor up at Cruz Crossroads area, and that LD had started trying to court Gardis, but he had to get in the front door of the church from Papa Barnes,
right, which was a preacher.
Which was a preacher. That's right. That's kind of what's been kind of coming to, and that they had met somehow at a brush arbor. Now I'm sure LD made eyes on her somewhere else. But that's what I joked with him about. Is I don't know how LD got up into a church, but but anyway, that was it.
Those were the days.
Yeah. Well, tell me. I mean, it's kind of hard when you're, a year old to probably 6-year-old to really remember much. I mean, those times your mind's just not developed yet enough to understand those days. But along the age of 6 to 12 years old, you can remember things a little bit, whether they're good or bad, that stood out in your mind. Tell me a little bit of the things that might come to your mind about your childhood, because now you were the baby at 1960 being born. Things were different than when Francis was born in 1939. And
exactly.
what things do you remember growing up underneath LD and Gardis in your time?
Oh my goodness!
It's just anything, whatever comes to mind.
Mama, I've got a picture of me about, I think, 2 years old, sitting down in the English pea patch. That somebody took a picture, but anyway, I guess I started school when I was about 6 or 7 years old at Bethlehem, and then from there, time just went on.
Yeah. What was it like with as I told y'all before, I'll refer to Gardis and LD as Granny and Granddaddy, because that's who they were to me. But I mean, what was it like on a daily grind out on the farm when you came along? Because that would have been probably around where you would remember, probably around 1970.
Yeah.
Did we at that time? Did we have? Do you remember us having a washing machine and a dryer in the house, or did we?
I think we was fortunate. Now we didn't. We had a black and white television, and then I believe there was a washing machine, but there wasn't no dryer. You hung the clothes out on the line.
Yeah.
Which was a line stretched out there in the yard. But
yeah, do you remember ever having to be the one to go out and hang the clothes on the line?
Sometimes, or go take them in.
Take them in.
Yeah.
That's what I was telling the folks that are watching this. When you take clothes off a line, it wasn't like coming out of a dryer that we had in this day and time. That they was usually stiff as a board.
Stiff as a board. Stiffer than what they come out of the dryer this day and time. Yeah.
And but what about with LD? I mean, I know he farmed and he pulped wood and he did all that.
Yeah.
What do you remember about his occupation, and how did you fit into any of that?
He loved to plant watermelons. I've heard that LD cleared Holmes County to plant watermelons on the new ground. That's clearing the land. You go out there and cutting down the trees and getting the stumps and all that, and then that's what they call new ground.
Yeah.
And he planted watermelons all over Holmes County. And Mama, bless her heart, she's planted them. We always had to plant them by hand with a hoe, and you dig a hole and step off about 3 steps and put the seed in the ground again. So
there wasn't no tractor that was putting
no.
seeds in the ground and planting
and
by hand.
me and Mama would be out there hoeing them after they start cracking the ground, and Daddy'd want to go along and put another set of seed in the ground between them, just in case the ones that were coming up got frostbite or something other. Then he'd have the second crop to come up. And then when they got up, started growing, you had to go doodle the dirt around each plant, and Daddy would come out there and he'd start hoeing, but directly you'd look across the field and he'd be way off over yonder somewhere. He wouldn't stay on the road. He was just walking around the field, and directly he'd leave.
Inspecting things.
And it was me and Mama and whoever else, was out there helping us.
Hoe plant.
Yeah.
Golly.
And then Mama, she, I remember, because it had a big garden, squash, peas, butter beans, and so on and so forth. And there's a big oak tree out there in the block, by the block house where we lived, or I grew up in. Everybody else grew up in a
bungalow. In a
But I was fortunate enough to come up in a block house
that had running water.
Yeah, and there was a big oak tree out there, and all of us, Francis, Christine, everybody would get out there, and we'd pick squash and peas and stuff, and then get under that tree and shell them. And Mom would get enough of each one of the items. Mom would go in there and start cooking in the kitchen, and we'd have an awesome meal. I think you probably partook in some of that.
I was in there, around there somewhere.
Yeah.
Gosh, so he grew. What's probably the most acreage you think you remember him
Probably
ever doing?
about 200 acres.
200 acres of watermelons.
Yeah.
Gosh almighty.
And I think Tommy, he packed a lot of the 18-wheelers, and then as I grew up, 16, 17, 18 years old, I packed a load or two myself. And that's a hot job, and come June and July of that.
Loading watermelons was a job.
Yeah.
When you got through with watermelon season, y'all, you look like some bodybuilder out there.
And the thing about it is, us being the children of LD, you didn't get paid for it. Your payment was the food that was put on the table
and a place to live.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And that's why he back then all those families. I was talking to Clifton, and he was talking about how many people was in his graduating class. And, he was probably on up to 60, 70 in his graduating class, where Hewlin, that was born in 42, and Francis and Christine might have had 15 or 20 graduating. But they had to have those kids to work those farms because you just didn't have the labor force. And that's what that's why they had them. That, and maybe having a little bit of fun. Making those babies
along the way.
Well, what about your recollection of? I know he did watermelons, and he did hogs,
corn and hogs. Yeah.
Hogs, and the one that he got famous for was watermelons and syrup, cane syrup.
Yep.
And so those were the two, from what I've gathered, that he was known around the county and afar for doing those two things well. Doing them well.
Yeah.
But what do you remember about the syrup making there at the old farm?
Well, there was a platform out there. To start off with, you had to go and strip the cane out the other in the field, and then take a machete and cut it off, and then load it on the truck or trailer or whatever, and haul it to the platform where they had the grinding machine. And I remember feeding that some, and the juice would come out and go over there to what they called
a vat.
Vat. And he, like you said, he was known for his. You could hold a clear jar of syrup up, and just about see through it. It was so clear. You know, some of the people that made syrup, it was black. You know, I guess they got it too hot or something.
It almost turned into molasses.
Yeah. And but Daddy, like I said, Daddy was well known for his syrup making.
Yeah. Do you remember having to get up and get out there and work it before you went to school?
Yeah, and doing that, and then he also, you know, on the hog situation, he'd have them all pinned up, and the pigs, you know, the male pigs, you know, when you castrate them, I'd have to go and some mornings and help him castrate the little piglets, and then get up and go to school. And I'd be down in there holding the little pig while he had his case knife out doing the job. And the old mama sow was in the next pen over there, and she was trying to come over. The pigs was squealing, and she was trying to come. I said, "Dad, she's gonna come over." Scared me to death. I wasn't as tough as Clifton, Tommy, and Ewan.
Yeah, you wasn't, and you weren't that old, really.
No, probably I was probably 15, 16 years old.
And you were 15 or 16, and like I said, there's about 8 years difference between you and me.
Yeah.
Now, I remember being out there with you and me and LD, Papa Cruz. I remember being out there because I was about 8-ish, 7 or 8-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd tell me to get a hold of one leg, and you'd have one leg of that little piglet. And like you said, old Mama Sal was over there next door. She was trying to bust out of the stall to get to her pigs that were squealing. And then castration, you know, hopefully you guys know what that is, but if not, it's basically taking a young piglet and cutting his testicles off, and then letting them go,
making them
a bar, and from what do you remember the reason was for doing that?
They would just grow off faster, be more meatier. Meatier. Yeah.
The only thing I can remember whoever telling me back in the day was that the meat tasted better without his, you know, having his testicles growing up. That it was a lot smoother meat. Yeah. But I remember being out there with you and me at 8 years old trying to hang on with that one leg, just a shaking, and LD saying, "Hold him still, son, hold him still."
With some choice words behind that.
Yeah. And me and you did everything we could do to hang on to that pig.
Yeah.
And then not only that, trying to go catch that pig that was in a pen to get him over there so he could castrate him.
Yeah.
And me being scared, I was scared to death of those pigs.
That was two of us. But anyway, we made it through.
Yeah. So we did have some good times there. But so you told me, so you went to Bethlehem to school,
right?
And you graduated in
1978. There was 47, I believe, in my class, graduating class.
1978. And you did the whole 12 years there at Bethlehem, where the older kids, some of them went to Issagar,
right,
up there, and went to that. What? Anything else that comes to mind out there on the farm with Granny and Granddaddy that stood out in your mind that you
Mama staying in the garden all the time, and you know, she'd get down on her knees and crawl and pick the butter beans and do all the gardening, and the chicken coop out there. She'd say, "Go out there and catch me that hen right yonder," and she'd get out there in the yard and take it by the neck and give it a good jerk and throw it out there in the yard, and the hen. We'd have some good chicken and dumplings. She'd take the dough and stuff and put it on the kitchen table and roll it out and have dumplings. You know, it was real thin, and then that old fat hen, she'd boil it together, and she was awesome at chicken and dumplings.
Man.
But and then we had a peanut field that was not a peanut field, a pea patch it was at the backside of the property out there, and there was an old guinea that she had that stayed right with her all the time. And we had an old vehicle. Mama didn't drive much, but we had an old pickup, what we call a gray goose. She'd get in that thing and go over there to the pea patch, across the field, and that old guinea would get up there on the corner post, cross tie post in the front yard, and watch her when she drove around the field to get to the pea patch. And after she got there, that guinea would rise and fly over there to the pea patch and walk down the rows with her while she was picking peas. And then Cheryl, the guinea was aggressive, but not to Mama. But Cheryl thought she killed him one time because he tried to flog her, and Cheryl kicked him, and Cheryl thought she killed Mama's guinea.
I remember the guinea, and I remember his name. I remember his name. You remember his name?
No. Was it Henry?
No. Herman.
I had the H part.
Yeah,
Herman. That was
I remember Herman along that,
yeah.
and I remember Herman would, like you said, he was real protective of Granny.
Yep.
And he would if she was out in the pea patch, because sometimes when I was with her out there, if there was a snake around or anything like that, he'd go crazy, trying to alert her to let her know.
Yeah.
And I dang sure I remember that one. That's a good one. Did you have anything back in while you were actually out at Bethlehem? Anything stand out to you about high school days of actually going to Bethlehem and your friends out there? Anything that stood out to you?
Well, I didn't play any kind of sports. I just kind of made it through the 12 years. But somehow, the year I graduated, the faculty and staff voted me most dependable and best groomed. That was my senior year. Like I say, I made it through school. I done what Daddy and Mama wanted me to do, and he offered, Daddy offered, to send me on to college, but I chose a different path.
Right.
And there again, they was farmers, and funds wasn't readily available all the time, but Daddy and Mama would have provided for me to go on to college had I chose to. But I had a pretty good life.
Yeah. Well, it was some good. It was some, I remember a lot of it because I was right there with you, and I wouldn't change it for anything. I mean, it was some good times. But one thing intrigued me though. You told me the other night. I don't know if you're the only child that actually got put in jail one night, but you told me something about that one time. I need to know about how all that went on.
Yeah, I was probably about 17 years old, and we used to actually. I think I had gotten me a 1978 Chevrolet 4-wheel drive Silverado. And we would go to Geneva. We called it Boogieville back then, and go to Geneva on Friday and Saturday night looking for some Alabama women. And me and my nephew Bobby Paulin, we went up there and met up with a couple of my high school classmates, but we had already graduated. But so I guess I was about 18 then. I graduated when I was 17 and then turned 18 in July. But anyway, we were riding around and we went out to the TG&Y there in town, and got out, and we pulled our knife. We're just joking up, just young boys just joking when they pulled our knives out and was walking up to one another. But anyway, we put them back in our pocket. But there was this lady there, kind of said something, and so we just brushed it off. And we actually, what they call the junction up there where the Pea River and the Choctawhatchee River meet in Geneva. We went down there and we actually drank a Michelob beer down there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you could buy a beer back then at 18 or something or other.
Right.
But anyway, we decided we'd come back into town, and there was a Sonic there, and eatery. I don't know where. I guess they still some Sonics around.
Yeah, there's still a few.
But anyway, I pull into one of the parking places, and I leave this place over here on the left to for one of my buddies. But instead, there was a county cop pulled in over here, and my buddy had to go around. And me and Bobby was sitting there, and I had my window rolled down, and around the front of the cop car, the officer, he come up to the driver's side, just like you're on my left, and he said, "Was you out at TG a while ago?" I said, "No, sir." I said, "Oh yeah." I said, "There was a wreck out there," and about that, which there was a wreck, and about that time, he reaches in and grabs me like this and just shoves me up in the seat. Reaches in my vehicle and shoves me up in the seat. He said, "I'm gonna teach you punks from Florida to come up here and cuss women." I thought, I ain't cussed nobody, but anyway, he put me and Bobby in the back seat. He handcuffed us together and put us in the back seat, carried us to the county jail there in Geneva. I don't know how Bobby got out of it, but they put me in jail. And watching what little bit of television I watched, they was fixing to put me in a cell, and I said, "Do I get a phone call? Can I make a phone call?" I mean, because I was by myself at that point in time. But anyway, and they said, "Yeah." So my recollection, I called Cheryl. She wasn't living at Mom and Daddy. I was still living with Mom and Daddy at that time. And so Cheryl gets up with Hewlin and Bill Harris, and they come up there and get me out. I don't remember how I got back to the house, but anyway, I got to the house and I went on in there and went to bed. And the next morning, Daddy comes in there and wakes me up, and he said, "Wake up, jailbird." I said, "Oh my God," because I hadn't never really been in trouble with Daddy, and I thought, "Oh Lord." Yeah. And he asked me, he said, "Sunday," he said, "Did you do what they said you done?" I said, "No, sir." And that's one thing you didn't do to LD, is lie to me, because you would suffer some consequences.
Real consequences.
But anyway, he said, I'm gonna ride on up there to Geneva and go talk to the sheriff." And I thought, I was scared to death. But anyway, he went on up there, and from all reports, the sheriff told him, said, "Mr. Cruz," he said, "you can't come up here and cause no trouble now." He said, "Mr. Daddy said, I ain't." He said, "I just want to see the son of a bitch that locked my son up last night, so I'll know him the next time I see him."
And that was it.
Yeah.
As far as you know, none of that actually was on your record.
No, it never did show up on my record. No.
Back then, they could just kind of teach you a lesson and shove it under the door. That's awesome. Well, but
that's the only time, thank the good Lord, that I've ever been locked up.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go back.
And I don't know if any of the others have or not. I didn't.
I was thinking the other night after I mentioned that to you, I thought, am I the only one that's ever been locked up in jail? Literally locked up in jail? I think I am.
Well, I didn't ask none of your brothers and sisters.
The caboose
been locked in jail. But that's good to know.
Yeah.
So y'all know that there's at least one of them that got locked up.
Yeah.
Now I do know, talking about getting locked up, is that your granddaddy Barnes spent 5 years in prison over at Rayford, over there around close between Tallahassee and Jacksonville area.
Yeah.
And so I do know that there was not a cruise, but that was a Barnes that spent some time over there. And we heard the story on that one yesterday. But so that's good. I think we've kind of covered it, but we'll just talk about it a little bit more. I'd like to know what, in your eyes, what was LD like and what was Gardis like in your eyes, because not that they both had kind of mellowed out in life, but they had changed a little bit by the time you were born. So what, in your eyes, what was LD like for you growing up there?
Well, actually, when I was born, Daddy was 47 and Mama was 45. I think I was a mistake.
Not a minute.
because there's 7 years difference between me and Cheryl, the 7th child. And like I say, I think I was I wouldn't say a mistake. I'd say I always say it was a good mistake.
Yeah,
because I was able to help take care of them in their older days.
That's right.
But no, Daddy in his overalls constantly. He was elected county commissioner in the late 50s and early 60s. He served 8 years, and I remember going around. Matter of fact, I think the house that I'm living in now, I was with Daddy, and I probably wasn't but 2 or 3, maybe 4 years old. But there's a block wall out here on the back side that I think I remember after I moved here and bought this place. I remember coming with Daddy because he was what they call it, electioneering back then, politicking this day and time. But I think Daddy in his overalls and Mama, just God love her, for her, being a farm wife and staying in the garden and providing anything in the world that she could to us.
Yeah, raising 8 kids.
Yeah.
From that range was something.
Yeah.
And now that brings me to another. I mean, as you talk about LD, he was a county commissioner for 8 years. Now you had that politic bug in you too, didn't you?
Yeah, I actually started with Panhandle Area Education Consortium, and I drove a school bus for 3 years. I actually hauled your ass
you did.
to school and back. And this old boy here, he when I was driving the bus, he'd come get on the bus in the afternoon, wouldn't have a damn book one in his hand. I thought, I think I asked you a time or two. I said, you ain't got no books. But anyway, I'm about to get off track of where I was going. But anyway, I was his bus driver. But from like 79 to 82, I drove a school bus, and then I went to work. My brother-in-law, Ed Paulin, Bob Paulin, he got me a job over at PAC. And I started there in about 82, and then worked there till 2016. I retired with 38 years in the Florida retirement system.
Yeah.
But in 1988, I was elected county commissioner, and I served from 88 to 92, and then got beat, and then in 96 I ran again and was reelected, and I served till the year 2000. And I was chairman of the board those last 4 years from 96 to 2000.
Yeah.
But yeah, Daddy, the clerk of court then, Cody Taylor, he said this, he brought it up in one of the meetings. He said, this is unique. He said, this man's daddy was county commissioner, split term for 8 years, and then his son Ricky is come right around and done the same thing.
Split term again. Yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
That is unique to hear that, and from what I know, you said a little bit about Gardis, but I remember I remember things when you and I were living there at the house, and I was living with y'all. I remember things that we would be laying there at night, or we'd be there on a Friday night, I can remember, and she would have picked peas, and me and her had been in the garden all day or whatever, and we'd come in, and the day didn't end until she was starting to doze off. We were watching Dukes of Hazzard. We were watching the show Dallas, and then I think there was one after it called Dynasty or something that would come on. Those three, and me and her'd be there, and I'd be trying to shell peas or whatever with her, and she'd be still going. And then usually about the end of Dukes of Hazzard, when Dallas was coming on around 9 o'clock at night, you could look over there and her whole head would be nodding down, and you'd hear her snore a little, and I'd punch her and say, "Granny, wake up." And she's like, "I ain't asleep, son. I'm just resting my eyes."
Resting my eyes, that's exactly. And the TV shows that she liked, there was Jessica Lansbury too, and Murder, She Wrote.
Murder, She Wrote.
She enjoyed watching that. Yeah. But like you said, I'm not sleeping. I'm just resting my eyes.
Resting my eyes.
I remember that now.
And I'd have to keep punching her and tell her, "Get up and go to bed, Granny." And then she finally would. But the other thing I remember, and we talked about this with some of the other brothers and sisters that have this, but she had a unique skin that several of y'all have, and I think Daddy got it, Francis got it, Clifton got it. I don't remember. Did you get the same type of skin as she? So it was hard to be out in the sun.
Yeah.
And she would wear long sleeve shirts in the middle of the summer out there picking peas. Yeah. And she always would have a bonnet on. And I think I'm going to have a picture of that with her bonnet. And we'll show y'all. But any other things about Granny that really stood out?
She's just a wonderful lady.
Yeah. And she finally succumbed to colon cancer.
Right.
And I remember because I was in college at Troy State University at the time, and I remember when that happened, and that was one thing that she always wanted to. That she always told me. She said, "I want you to go to college and finish your degree," and it broke my heart for her not to see me.
Yeah.
Finish that.
Right.
But I did. So anyway, that was good.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I actually got married in 1992. To me, was the worst year of my life, if you can have one. We found out Mama, as Scott mentioned, had colon cancer in January of that year, and I was county commissioner, and then one of my sisters, come to me and said, if I was dating this girl, and one of my sisters came to me and said, if you want Mama to see you get married, you need to go ahead and get married. And I'd only dated this girl for 3 or 4 months. So, but anyway, I got August the 2nd. I got married.
92?
Of 92.
1992.
And then August the 25th of 1992, Mama passed away. And then we had the election. I lost the election. Then I filed for a divorce so I can October, and then the divorce was final in December. So that
1992 was,
that's my worst year. I mean, everything happened from just about January 1 to December 31st.
Good gracious.
All of that stuff. But anyway,
well, I'm glad all of it's over and you made it through that.
Yep.
That's something. I got 2 more questions, and then we'll kind of wind this down. But number one is there were 8 children. You were the caboose of those 8, but there was one that didn't make it very long with us, and that was Aunt Marie. Tell me and tell our viewers a little bit about what you remember about Aunt Marie.
I was about 15 or 16 years old when she passed away. But what I remember about Marie is Cheryl and me and Mama during the summer. Marie and her husband Larry Hewitt lived in Ocala, and me and Mama, or actually Cheryl, because I was just a little fella. But anyway, we would Cheryl and Mama, we would go to Ocala, and Marie would take us to Silver Springs, and stuff, and that I guess that was about every summer. I mean, there was several years that we done that, but I do remember Marie taking us to
Silver Springs, and that's when they had those
glass bottom boats.
Glass bottom boats,
yes.
And you could see
the fish and whatever. Down in the bottom. Yeah,
man, that was a treat. That was a treat.
You take an old redneck country boy and take it put it in something like that. That was interesting.
That was a treat.
Yeah.
Well,
but Marie was a wonderful person. Best. But like I say, I was 15 to 16 years old when she passed.
Yeah. So.
And Mama took care of her as well. Tried to as much as she could. I think Mama went and stayed down there quite a bit while Marie was sick.
Yeah, and you were actually. She had been out of the house when you were.
Yeah. Well, that's like all my older. Even Cheryl was almost out of the house when I come along, and I didn't know what all my other older siblings, was like, to be honest with you, because they'd already got off and got married and had children. Well, matter of fact, Francis's oldest son, Bobby, is only a year and a half younger than I am.
Than you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
18 months younger.
So you were an uncle at a year and a half old.
Yeah. And everybody would ask Frank, because Francis would take me wherever her and Bobby went, and everybody asked me, said, "Francis, is that yours?" "No, that's my brother." But me and Bobby was about the same age and same height.
That's funny. That's funny. Well, is there? We're doing this for our future generations to have a recollection or something that they can look back on and know who their ancestors were.
Yeah.
Because this, we're in 2025,
right.
And I hope that 100 years from now that somebody in our lineage is being able to see this and say, "Wow, that's how it was back then." But is there anything that you would want to share with anybody viewing this, years down the road? Anything that we talked about?
Just y'all stay safe and live to God's word, and I hope y'all the best of luck in the future, because the way it's looking, it don't look good sometimes, but just keep the faith, and it'll come to you.
Yeah, well, that's some good advice. Now you touched on something a little bit earlier that was that has been said previously, unbeknownst to you, because you don't know anything about the other interviews that we've conducted. But you did say one thing that stood out, is that one thing you were taught in that Cruz household was integrity and lying, cheating, and stealing.
Yeah.
And that was one thing that is a common denominator coming out of LD and Gardis' household.
Yeah.
Is that was one thing that was not tolerated.
Yeah.
And that was something that
lying, cheating, or stealing.
You didn't do that. You did it once.
Yeah.
If you did it once.
Yeah. You didn't do it no more.
You didn't do it no more.
And Daddy had the biggest hands, and sometimes I was scared of him, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah.
And
I was scared to death of LD Cruz, and he was my granddaddy.
Yeah.
and he would have protected me from anything, but he would also snatch your butt up
and he liked to hit the bottle every now and then too.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a good sight when he was drinking, but it lasted for a day or two, and it was all. That was during my time. Now I don't know what it was like prior to, but yeah, but you didn't want to see him drinking.
No, because he'd fight that wall right there with me.
Yeah.
Well, there were some things that I was thinking about. I woke up about 2:00 this morning. I had on my mind that I actually kind of forgot, because there were some really good times out on the farm that I remember, and that was the hunting and fishing that was done. And I can remember LD having just a doggone slew of hunting dogs. And back in those days, and I don't know what it is like in y'all's lifetime now that are watching this, but back in those days, when you lived on the Choctawhatchee River and you were in the river swamps, as we called it, hunting white-tailed deer, the fun thing that they did was they had hound dogs, bloodhounds, beagles, and other breeds, and they would put those dogs on a trail of white-tailed deer. So all you would hear is those dogs barking and howling through the river swamps. What do you remember about all that?
I was one of the ones back in about 1980, I believe it was, that killed one of the biggest deer in Holmes County. Daddy that morning he always got up early and rode the dirt roads looking for deer tracks, and he come back. He found where 3 had crossed the road down there, and he come back to the house and said, "Son, get up and let's go kill this deer down here, these deer." And there wasn't nobody but me and Captain Ballot, J.E. Ballot, and Ray Miller, Bill Harris, and Huey Harris. Well, and Daddy. There was 5 of us. But he said, "Son, go right around yonder and get on that stand." So I went around there and I got out of the vehicle and I said, "This ain't where he told me to go." So I turned and went another little route. But anyway, just a little bit, Daddy turned the dogs out, and it wasn't a minute I heard a limb crack. I said, "Oh my goodness." So I put my gun up, and about that time there was a buck about 25 steps, 25 yards out there. Showed up, and I cut down on him. And that old deer, he just stood up, and he was a good 10 point, but he was a 12 point. It had 2 little tines that made him a 12 point, but he was 18 and 3/4 inch spread in between the antlers. And so, like I say, he rose up, and I had got out there to him by that time, and when he done that, I shot him again, and he fell down, and there's a whole bunch of different stories that you could tell about deer hunting, but going through the woods with the dogs, like you said, and it was fun. I'm afraid y'all are not going to be able to do kind of stuff like that, probably when y'all view this. But,
never, never. Yeah. But that was, he'd take those, and he'd have. I remember he'd have 10, 12, 15 black and tan walkers, beagles, and he'd have to keep those things taken care of, fed, and then put them out on a trail, and they'd trail that deer, and they'd be chasing that deer through the woods, and everybody would set up in different locations waiting on that deer to cross their path, so hopefully they would get that, be able to shoot that one. And then now they did all this stuff before their day started for working, because they were all, most of them, self-employed, and they were able to they'd go hunt for for 4 hours, and then come back, get the dogs in, put the dogs up, and then they'd go on about their chores for the day, if it was farming or if it was sawmilling or working, whatever it was, they'd go on in and go to work. So all this happened while most people were still in bed. They were doing this stuff.
Yep.
But that was some days there and all. But anyway, well, I don't have much more that I was gonna chat with you.
Y'all just take care of yourself, and I hope the best of luck to each and every one of you.
Yeah.
I love y'all.
Yeah. Now I will tell you this too, real quick about Rick. Now Rick, he loves to play the Florida lottery, and I'm not going to tell you that anything that he's won, but I can tell you that he's probably won more money in the Florida lottery than he's ever made in his lifetime. So
I got a picture right there. You want me to get it?
Well, I don't know. Does everybody know about it?
Yeah.
Everybody does know about it, so it ain't a real deal. But there's a picture of Rick Cruz. I think he's probably the first Cruz to ever win $1 million in the Florida lottery, and he won that on a scratch-off ticket.
$50 scratch-off.
$50 scratch-off ticket, and it was this year, 24?
It was, matter of fact, January the 15th of 24.
2024.
Almost a year. I'm looking forward to the 15th of this year. See if I can change it up again.
Yeah, so we got a millionaire in the family.
Yep.
No matter what happens in the future. So y'all say,
a millionaire that's still working.
Yeah, that's still working. We're still working.
I will be Medicare age this year, so
yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Ricky. I appreciate it, brother. Love you, and you guys take care. And there'll be more to come. And look for another episode of Down Home.